Welcome to Super Sorry. Today's episode is less fan mail and more considered reflection.
Every so often, we accidentally create a moment.
Today's episode is the result of one of those moments.
Someone listened to our episode, paused, reflected, and then decided to respond.
What follows, we believe, is pretty thoughtful.
And measured.
And intentional.
Which means I think we probably should pay attention.
So the letter begins, Dear Super Sorry team, I just finished your Captain America the Winter Soldier episode, and as someone who used to work as a mid-level analyst for a large security-focused organization that had to go underground due to a Hydra infiltration, I felt compelled to write in. Specifically because you articulated something I have spent years not articulating.
All right, this is already sounding a little ominous. The letter continues on. You talked a lot about trust in this episode, institutional trust, personal trust, and what happens when those two things quietly stop lining up. I appreciated that you didn't frame the need to rebuild the organization that I work for as a sudden shock, but as the end result of many small decisions no one stopped to question.
It goes on. Listening to your breakdown of Project Insight was educational. Not because the outcome was new information, but because hearing you describe it out loud made it harder to hide behind phrases like plausible safeguards and threat mitigation. Preemptive violence sounds different when someone else says it plainly.
Yeah, I think it really does, yeah. You also spent time on the technician who refuses to launch the helicarriers. The one who says, I'm sorry, sir, I can't do that. I had never thought of that moment as an apology before, but you reframed it as accountability, and that really stuck with me.
It goes on because I realized something uncomfortable while listening. I never launched anything. I never ordered anything, but I also never said no.
Oof, yeah. I told myself that my role was small, that the decisions were above my clearance level, and that silence was neutrality. Your episode gently dismantled that logic without turning it into a lecture.
We do love a dismantling.
A gentle one.
And it closes with, so I suppose this letter is my way of acknowledging that being competent, cautious, and quiet are not the same as being responsible. Thank you for confirming that it is fair to revisit these moments, not to punish yourself, but to understand them. Yours anonymously, a former analyst who read the briefings.
That was nice. It was poignant without getting too heavy.
Yeah, that felt like someone finally putting a period at the end of a sentence they've been writing for years.
And doing it without apologizing for having the thought.
You know, what stands out to me here isn't regret, it's recognition.
Yeah, this wasn't someone confessing. This was someone auditing their own logic.
Yeah, exactly. It's like listening to our Winter Soldier episode gave them a clearer framework for understanding their past and what matters.
Because the Winter Soldier isn't really about villains twirling their mustaches. It's about systems that feel reasonable right up until they don't.
This letter really captures that. The idea that if you weren't the one ordering the damage, you didn't have to question your role in it.
And what this writer seems to learn is that you don't need a big moment. Sometimes the most meaningful shift is just realizing that silence is still a choice.
Well, whoever wrote this, I'm really glad you wrote in. Well, that wraps up our Captain America the Winter Soldier fan mail edition. If any other listeners want to write in, our inbox is open.
And if you don't, we are
super sorry. Super Sorry is written and hosted by Amber and Todd. Produced by A Super Sorry LLC. Music by Jam Studio. Your support helps us keep asking the hard questions and saying the hard apologies. Thanks for tuning in and sharing with friends. Super Sorry is not affiliated with Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios, the Walt Disney Company, or Disney+. As of this recording, all Marvel characters mentioned in the podcast are the property of the Walt Disney Company.